I welcome you all on the second lecture. We are discussing your subject, business communication. In the last lecture, we have started with the first unit, Introduction to Business Communication. As we have seen earlier, your chapter 1 is Introduction of Business Communication. In our first lecture, we discussed introduction, meaning and definition of communication. We also talked about various characteristics, importance of communication. Now, in this second lecture, we will be discussing one more important part of your first chapter, that is principles of communication. So, talking about the principles, as you know, communication is central to everything that wonders. One's activities might succeed or fail, and one's goals can be achieved or not according to one's ability to communicate effectively. Therefore, to have effective communication, we have to follow certain principles. When a person follows those principles, automatically the communication becomes effective. So, one by one, let's see what are those principles. We will begin with the basic principles first. So, in that, number 1 is principle of clarity. The idea to be communicated should be in an absolute, clear, understandable, positive, and precise form. The idea should not be confusing. It should be easily understandable to all the levels of management. The manager should know that communication is complete unless the message is correctly understood by the receiver. So that is why the first principle that we should follow is clarity. The communication must be clear and understandable. Second principle is principle of information. The sender must be clear in his mind about what he wants to communicate. The better the understanding of the speaker, the more effective the communication will be. Communication is a systematic and continuous process of telling, listening, and understanding. Hence, the communicator and the recipient should both participate in the communication. There should be mutual understanding between the communicator and communicatee. Third principle is the principle of consistency. The action and behavior of the communicator must be consistent with the matter of communication. The message should be consistent with the overall objective, plans, policies, programs, and procedures of the concern. There should not be a gap between what the communicator says and what he does. Otherwise, his subordinates would lose faith in the communicator. So that is why there has to be a consistent and continuous communication. Fourth principle is of accuracy or also completeness. The communication should be complete in all respect. Incomplete communication creates misunderstanding on the part of the receiver, and it results in delayed actions which may spoil the cordial relationship existing between the two. So, one more important principle is having accuracy or having complete communication. Next is the principle of timeliness. The information or ideas must be conveyed at a proper time. Improper timing of communication results in failure of creating the desired or expected response in the minds of the receivers. The system of communication should be continuous. In order to develop good communication relationship, honest efforts are essential. So the important point in this particular principle is that The right time should be used to communicate the message. Once the time is gone or the time is not correct, then that communication doesn't become effective. Next is the principle of appropriate channel. The channel of communication should be appropriate depending upon the nature and purpose of the contents to be conveyed. Lengthy messages can be conveyed better through written communication. Oral communication can be used for conveying firm orders. A number of medias are available for communication, but the proper selection of a medium which suits the sender, receiver and the message should be selected. All medias cannot be equally effective in all situations. So that is why choosing a right channel or proper channel becomes important when you want to communicate effectively. So these 6 are the basic principles that you have to follow to make your communication effective. Next we will see some other principles that are also important to make our communication effective. So first is communicate with an aim or communicate with an objective. One must be clear about the purpose of communication. Do you want to warn your employees? Do you want to give a recommendation to your boss? If one is clear about the objective, it will be easier to keep relevant and contradictory material out of the message. The second principle is planning the message. The success of encoding and decoding of a message depends upon the way one composes or organizes the message. If it is a written communication, one must use simple and forceful language. If it's presentation, then it should be neat and impressive. If it is oral communication, one must be brief and precise and use suitable variations in the pitch of one's voice. Therefore, planning the message makes your communication effective. Third is the message should suit the needs of the receiver. While organizing a message, a thorough study of the receiver, like his academic qualification, technical know-how, intellectual level, status, psychological attitude should be done. One cannot use the same language while communicating with an illiterate worker in a factory as one does with the director of a company. Therefore, the message should be suitable and it should fulfill need of the receiver. Fourth principle is message should attract attention. Whether the message is written or oral, it should attract the receiver. To render the message attractive, it should be conveyed in a forceful, loud and clear manner as far as possible. Having regards to the demands of the situation, the message should be systematically arranged so it will be able to gather or attract attention of the listener. The last principle is barriers to effective communication. So barriers are the difficulties or problems or hurdles that may affect your effective communication. Therefore, if any barriers are noticed, one should try to remove them. Messages are often transmitted in technical language, technical patterns, usage of expressions which might create confusion. So such barriers should be removed while communicating. So when we follow all these principles, then we can be sure that our communication is going to be effective. Thank you.